19 tonight. So trust me, we're just going to hit the highlights. We're not going to go verse by verse through all these chapters. But we're looking at the life of Moses, as Moses was a faithful servant of God, and we're learning more about him and why God said he was faithful. And I think one of those is the idea of perseverance. And I think we'll see that tonight a little bit when it comes to the life of Moses. So to set the background a little bit of what's going on in these chapters, the people have now traveled and they're on the border of entering into the land of Canaan. And in Numbers chapter 13 is the sending out of the spies. And then you have the aftermath of that in chapter 14, as well as some other issues in 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. But all these events, you want to keep in mind that they're taking place over a very short period of days. And so one event after another is happening, and you're seeing a continual complaining of the people. And then there are also attempts to overthrow Moses and Aaron. And so in a way, what you're seeing in these chapters, in these verses. And so the heat is really being applied to Moses and to Aaron. And what we're going to focus on in the chapters is something that we've not seen before, but is found 4 times in just these chapters. And that is where Moses falls on his face, prostrate. And so we'll look at each one of the instances and what's going on and why Moses is doing this, and see how Moses responds to what is happening. So in chapter 13 are the sending out of the spies, and as you know, the 12 spies came back, 10 with a bad report and 2 with a good report. And so in chapter 14 is the aftermath of the people hearing the news of what is going on. So I'll begin reading with verse 1. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. So the reaction of the people here is not anything new. You have the complaining once again, and even questions about, do we really want Moses as a leader? We'd rather have someone else. So this has happened many times before. And as it reaches this fever pitch and crescendo, you really see the perseverance of Moses through all of this. And that's really, in a way, another word that we can use for faithfulness, is a consistency, a loyalty, being obedient. And it is built up over a period of time. And so Moses has been persevering, remaining faithful to the Lord, and even to the people during this time. So Joshua and Caleb, in response to this, speak out. It's interesting, Moses and Aaron are not responding at this point, but it's Joshua and Caleb. But when they hear the grumbling and then said, "We want someone to lead us. We're done with you, Moses and Aaron," is when they fell on their faces before all the assembly. So what is this indicating to us of the falling down before the people? I don't think this is falling down before the Lord, because it's saying it's before the people. So this isn't, I don't think, it's not like he's worshiping God, and I don't think right now he's praying to God. But I think what you have is that they're heartbroken over what the people are doing and what the people want. And I think that they all along, Moses, if you think about how selfless he has been up to this point, and how he's interceded for the people over and over again, even though God wishes to bring judgment against them for their complaining and for their disobedience. And so Moses has really poured his life into the people. And I think that he's heartbroken over the people's response to all of this. And Moses, I think in a part, Moses doesn't say this to the people, but don't you realize, what could have happened to us as people if I didn't ask God, if I didn't pray on behalf of you? He doesn't do that, but I wonder how much that is running through his mind as he's just heartbroken. I think also Moses and Aaron are just burdened for the people. Here's the sin of the people once again, and I think Moses realizes, this path of grumbling and complaining is a path of destruction. And so I think that there's a great burden that they have for the people as well. And so it has just caused him to just fall down literally on his face, to prostrate himself to the ground. And it's just a really hard, difficult thing that Moses and Aaron are going through at this time from the people. And so God's response in verse 11 through 13 is, you know what, Moses? I'm done with the people, and I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to begin with you. I'm going to get rid of all these people, but it's just going to be you, and we're going to start from scratch in a sense. Interesting, Moses doesn't say good riddance to the people. I think there's a lot of patience and perseverance with Moses, and once again, he intercedes on behalf of the people with God. What I see with Moses in part as well is, you don't realize Moses could have profited from this situation with the people being gone and God starting over. It wouldn't be, in a sense, it wouldn't be no longer the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It would now be the people of Moses. And so, in a way, it would have, by getting rid of the people, it would have made Moses' life a lot easier. And imagine God saying, I'm just going to start over with you. And you're going to be my prized person, and I'm going to build from there with you. But yet Moses is not interested in himself. Actually, he's more concerned about the Lord's reputation in this, because he says, Lord, if you wipe them out, what are all the nations are going to say? Because they know you are going to bring the people into the land of promise. And so Moses isn't reflecting upon himself. He's heartbroken. But he's not seeking retribution. He's not saying good riddance. But instead, he intercedes on the people's behalf, and he's more concerned about the Lord's reputation, the Lord's testimony, than anything else. And I think that's one of the things that can be, when it comes to faithfulness, is that our eyes always need to be on the Lord and concerned about the Lord and his work and being of others. And I think that's one of the great marks of what made Moses such a faithful servant, because when you start focusing on self and you become selfish and self-centered and you have selfish ambition, you're not going to be faithful to the Lord. You're going to cease to be faithful to the Lord if you are being faithful to the Lord at all. And so we see that with Moses. Well, unfortunately then, the people realize, God's sick and tired of us in a way. And so what they say after they hear the news that they're all going to die in the wilderness, okay, God, we're going to go. And Moses is like, no, guys, don't try to go into the promised land. It's not going to work. God is not going to give you victory. God cannot be in this. He's already said what's going to happen. It's 40 years of wandering in this desert area. And so the people want to go. And guess what happens? The people get wiped out, the ones that went into battle, and they're defeated. Well, we're going to skip over chapter 15, because 15 has to do with some laws concerning the people of Israel, sacrifices and such. So we're going to move to chapter 16. And in chapter 16 is what is known as Korah's rebellion. So there's more complaining about what's going on. But you have Korah and a select group of people who want the power. They want to remove Moses and Aaron from the positions of power. Moses as the prophet and as Aaron as the high priest. And they want, because Korah was of the priestly tribe, they want those two positions. And so they are sick and tired. And basically they say, in essence, to Moses, who made you the boss? You took this all yourself. You decided you're going to be the boss. You decided you're going to have the power, and you grabbed that power. Well, the people, I think, whether they were thinking about it or not, Moses and Aaron never appointed themselves to be the bosses. They were appointed by God. But the people want the power, and they actually are accusing Moses and Aaron of being power hungry and grabbing power. And so part of this was directed especially towards Aaron, because they wanted Aaron to be gone as the high priest, and they wanted him replaced with someone of their choosing. So what is Moses' response in chapter 16? Well, it is to fall on his face. So I'll begin reading with verse 1 of chapter 16. Now Korah the son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men. And they rose up before Moses with a number of the people of Israel, 250 chiefs of the congregation, chosen from the assembly. So the assembly knows what's going on. They want this as well. Well-known men. So these are the movers and the shakers among the people of Israel that are in cahoots with the men of Korah. So it says, they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, you have gone too far. For all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? When Moses heard it, he fell on his face. And he said to Korah and all his company, in the morning the Lord will show whose is his and who is holy, and will bring him near to him. And so it goes on from there, and basically there's going to be a day of reckoning that is going to happen here. So Moses' response to the organizing of this rebellion, and the people are just as much involved because they voted who's going to represent them. And these 250 men, some from the tribe of Levi, who want the office of Aaron, and sons of the tribe of Reuben, who want Moses' position, they come and challenge them, and they want to have them removed. And so what does Moses do? He falls on his face. I think once again, he's heartbroken. He's invested his whole life, these years and energy into the people of Israel, and this is the thanks he gets for it. Very easy to become angry and bitter. It's fascinating that when you get to chapter 20, and we're going to look at this next time, but when the people quarreled with Moses in chapter 20, there's a lot of anger and vitriol. And I think what you're seeing here is a display that the people are angry with Moses. And oftentimes when you're met with anger, guess what your primary response is going to be? Anger back, but he doesn't. He doesn't. But what he does say is, let the Lord decide the matter. If the Lord wants one of you to be leaders, then God will show it tomorrow. If the Lord wants me to be the leader, he will show that tomorrow. Let the Lord be the one who arbiters this situation. So while he's heartbroken, he's looking to the Lord to provide the answer to the situation that takes place. So what's interesting, he tells them on the next day to separate from the people so that God can judge the matter. And Moses also stands up for Aaron in this, because Aaron is being attacked as well. So Moses doesn't defend himself in chapter 16, but he does defend Aaron before the people. And of course, the people refuse to obey what he has to say. So the next day comes, and in verse 22 of chapter 16, it says, we'll pick it up in verse 20. And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. So basically, don't be next to the guy who's a rebel next to you, because you don't want to get singed as he gets burned up, in a sense. Well, anyway, it says, so this is Moses and Aaron, and in verse 22, and they, which is Moses and Aaron, fell on their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and will you be angry with all the congregation? God, please be merciful, in a way, is what Moses is saying. Be merciful to these people. It seems that there is one main person, probably Korah, is the one who is the main perpetrator of all this, and he has built up an alliance, if you want to say, and convinced a lot of people to go against Moses and to go against Aaron. So they refuse to get away from the people. So Moses says to the people, okay, you get away from them. And so certainly that happens. And we have the earth opening up and the rebels being swallowed, but then there's also a plague that kills some people here in chapter 16 the next day. And in verse 41, we see this statement. But on the next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. So the Lord, the earth opens up, gets the complainers, the rebels, swallows them up, and the next day, they're back to complaining again. And how dare you? Well, actually, Moses has been interceding for people all along. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of ironic what the accusation is against Moses and Aaron. And so in verse 42, and when the congregation had assembled against Moses and against Aaron, they turned toward the tent of meeting, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. And so you find here, I believe it's verse 42. Verse 45 is the verse. So he says, get away from the midst of this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. And that is where Moses takes the censer to stay the wrath of God among the people, to spare them. So at this point, when they fall upon their faces, it's at the tent of meeting. And I believe at this point, they're actually praying to God. This is prayer to God, this prostrating of themselves. And they act quickly so that the people will be spared. A lot of heartbreak, a great burden, just a lot of torment and pain that Moses and Aaron are going through, to where they're literally just falling down on their faces because it is so difficult. But they remain true to the Lord and persevere through it all. You see this crescendo, it's building, and they're still interceding for the people. What selflessness I think that we see here, and it's certainly a character trait of selflessness. In chapter 19, we won't cover it, but there's where you have every tribe has a staff that they're to bring to the tent of meeting. And the staff that buds is going to be God saying, this is my chosen leader. The next day they come back to the tent meeting, and all of these staffs, only one not only just buds, but it actually produces fruit. It produces almonds. And that's Aaron's staff. And God is confirming before the people of Israel, Moses and Aaron are my leaders. So God vindicates Moses and Aaron because they let the Lord do it. They didn't take it upon themselves. So just some great things that we can see here about Moses and Aaron in this passage of Scripture. But Moses is a faithful man. And boy, was the pressure building and building and building to this crescendo. And we see some great character traits and some great actions. And we can learn that to be faithful would be to learn from Moses these sorts of things as well. Anything stands out to you, or any questions of what we see in this passage? All right.